Sir, I'm asking you one last time. Show me your ID.
And I told you already, you have no legal reason to demand it.
You're refusing to cooperate. That's obstruction.
No, officer. That is called knowing my rights.
People like you always make this harder.
People like me? Finish that sentence. You stopped me for one.
Officer Aaron Blake had been with the city police force for 7 months when he made the biggest mistake of his whole career. It happened in a quiet parking lot in a normal neighborhood a little after 7:30 in the evening. No call came through the radio. No sign of trouble. No reason to stop anyone. He simply saw a black man walking to a nice car and decided the man did not belong with it. The man wore a dark hoodie, simple jeans, and sneakers. There was nothing strange, nothing loud, nothing fast. But Officer Blake walked up to him anyway and demanded identification. The man told him he was going home after a long shift. He said he would not show ID because there was no legal reason. Officer Blake quickly became aggressive, and in only a few seconds, he learned the man he was threatening was a superior court judge of the state. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. It was early evening on March 12th. The parking lot outside a mid-size apartment building was mostly quiet. Many people were already home. A few cars were still scattered around. The sun was going down, and long shadows stretched across the ground. Officer Aaron Blake was only 23 years old. For 7 months, he had been trying to prove he belonged on the police force. For 7 months, he had been trying to show he was strong, alert, and ready. He believed being tough meant being a good officer. He believed being suspicious made him careful. His training officer had written in early notes, "Officer Blake is excited to work, but he has trouble understanding danger levels. He reads normal behavior as suspicious. He needs more field supervision." But even with those warnings, he was cleared to patrol alone. The department needed more officers and training time was cut short. The warnings were ignored. In those 7 months, Officer Blake already had 3 complaints from the public. All 3 were about stops later called unnecessary. All 3 were against people of color. He was only spoken to, not punished. The pattern was showing, but no one took it seriously. That night, Blake drove through the neighborhood on a normal patrol. No emergencies. No messages from the station. He was just looking around, hoping to find something he could call suspicious. At 7:34 p.m., he turned into the apartment parking lot and saw a black man walking calmly toward a silver Mercedes. The man held car keys in his hand, moving at a normal pace. To anybody else, it would look normal. A resident heading to his car. But to Blake, it looked different. In his mind, shaped by bias he did not understand and ideas he never questioned, a black man walking to a luxury car did not match. He did not think these words out loud, but the idea guided him. People like that don't drive cars like this. He parked his patrol car and stepped out, walking directly toward the man. The man was Judge Marcus Hale. He had been awake for nearly 20 hours. At 45 years old, he served as a superior court judge for the state. He had been on the bench for 6 years, hearing criminal cases, civil cases, and appeals. Before that, he spent more than a decade as a civil rights lawyer. People respected him. He was known for fairness and strong understanding of the law. But that night, he was simply tired. He had spent the whole day and part of the evening working on a very difficult legal opinion. He showered in his office, changed into simple clothes, and walked to the parking lot ready to go home. He only wanted to sit in his car and sleep as soon as he reached his house. He did not want trouble. He did not want to speak to anyone. And he certainly did not want a police officer walking toward him. "Excuse me," Officer Blake said, using a strong tone right away. "I need to talk to you." Judge Hale stopped and turned, keys still in his hand. He saw the young officer, the uniform, the patrol car, and the hand close to the officer's belt. His first feeling was simply tiredness. Not now. Not today. "Good evening, officer," Hale said with a calm but tired voice. "Is there a problem? Can I see some ID?" Judge Hale looked confused. "ID? For what?" "I need to verify who you are." "I live here. I am walking to my car. What is the problem?" Officer Blake looked at the car, then at the judge. "That your car?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" Judge Hale felt his patience fade. He had worked on many civil rights cases. He knew exactly what was happening. He knew this stop had no legal reason. "Officer, I do not need to prove anything to you. I am on private property. I have done nothing wrong. You have no legal reason to ask for my identification." Blake stepped closer. "I'm asking nicely. And I am saying no politely, because you do not have reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Are you refusing to cooperate with a police officer? I am using my constitutional rights. Those are not the same thing." This was the moment when the officer could have walked away. A more experienced officer would have said good night and left. But Officer Blake did not leave. If this was you, do you think this officer even wanted a legal reason, or was he simply looking for justification after the fact? Drop a comment. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Officer Blake placed his hand on his radio. "I'm going to call this in as a suspicious person refusing to identify." Judge Hale stayed calm, but he was tired of this. "Call whoever you want. When your supervisor arrives, I will explain very clearly that you stopped me without reason, demanded ID without legal cause, and then tried to threaten me when I told you the law." Blake grew angry. "You think you're smart. I think I know the law. That is different. People like you." Hale's eyes sharpened. "People like me." "Finish that sentence, officer." Blake stopped himself. "People who don't cooperate make things harder for themselves." "I'm not making anything hard. You are. You stopped me for no reason, and now you are trying to justify it." Blake put his hand near his taser. A threat. "Last chance. Show me ID or I'm detaining you." "For what crime?" "Failure to identify." "That is not a crime in this state without reasonable suspicion, and you do not have it." "I have suspicion." "Tell me what it is. What exact facts made you think I have committed, am committing, or will commit a crime?" Blake froze. He had no answer. "Actually," Hale said, "under Terry v. Ohio, you must explain that. Are you a lawyer or something?" "Or something." At that moment, Judge Hale made a choice. He reached slowly into his jacket. Blake grabbed his taser grip. "What are you doing?" "I am getting my identification." Slowly. No sudden moves. Judge Hale took out his wallet, opened it, and held up his badge for the officer to see. "Superior Court of Pennsylvania. Judge Marcus Hale." Blake froze, eyes wide. His hand fell from his taser. "I am Judge Marcus Hale," he said quietly. "I live here. This is my car. I was walking to it. And you stopped me because you assumed a black man could not own a car like this." Blake turned pale. "Judge, I didn't." "You did," Hale said, "and you did it on camera." Blake looked at the body camera light. It was red, recording everything. "Judge, I'm sorry. What is your badge number?" Blake gave it with shaking hands. "And your supervisor's name?" "Sergeant Mills." "I will speak with him." A second patrol car entered the lot. Sergeant Mills stepped out and immediately understood something was wrong. Hale showed his badge. "Your officer stopped me without cause and threatened me. It is all on camera." Sergeant Mills looked shocked. "Judge Hale." Hale said nothing else. He got into his car and drove away. Part 2. About 1,000 words, continuing the 4,000 word total. Here is the next section, written in basic English, same message, new character names, and keeping the chapter word count close to 1,000 words. Lydia lived in a small town near the river. Many people in that town knew her because she was kind and always ready to help others. But even though Lydia looked peaceful on the outside, her heart had become tired. She believed in God, yes. She prayed, yes. But she had started doing something dangerous without fully understanding it. She had begun waiting too long to obey God. Every time God pushed her heart to do something, Lydia had a habit of saying, "I will do it later, when I have time." She did not say no to God. She simply delayed. And she told herself that delaying was not disobedience. She believed that as long as she planned to obey later, God would be fine with it. But delay changed her slowly. One morning, Lydia woke up with a strong feeling in her heart. She felt God telling her, "Call your sister. Make peace with her." Lydia and her sister Miriam had not spoken in many months because of a painful argument that both of them refused to discuss. Lydia felt the push clearly. She knew it was God. She even agreed with him. But then she said, "I will call her later." Later became evening. Evening became tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. And next week became nothing. Days passed, then weeks. Lydia's heart grew heavier, and she did not know why. She thought maybe she needed rest. She thought maybe she needed a vacation. She thought maybe she needed time alone, time to breathe, time to recenter. But deep down, the real reason was simple. She had pushed away the voice of God again and again, until her heart became hard without her even noticing. One afternoon, Lydia met an older woman named Meera. She was known as a wise woman who prayed for many people in the town. Lydia respected her, so she sat with her under a mango tree, hoping to feel better. Meera looked at her carefully and said, "My daughter, you have peace on your face, but not in your spirit. What are you running from?" Lydia tried to smile. "I am not running from anything. I think I am just tired." Meera shook her head. "No, this is not tiredness. This is the weight that enters a heart when it keeps questions unanswered. You have delayed something God told you to do." Lydia froze. Her eyes filled with tears because she knew the old woman was right. She said quietly, "God told me to call my sister many times, but I kept waiting. Now I do not even feel the push anymore." Meera took her hand gently. "Listen to me, Lydia. When God speaks to you, His words are not just instructions. They are protection. When He tells you to do something, it is because He sees danger or blessing ahead, something you cannot see. Delayed obedience is not a small thing. It is not harmless. It has consequences." Lydia lowered her head. "I did not think delaying was disobeying." The older woman smiled sadly. "Many people think the same thing. But delay is one of the enemy's softest traps. He knows that if he cannot make you say no to God, he will simply make you say later. And later becomes never." Lydia felt these words strike her heart. She felt as if God was reminding her again, giving her another chance. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and Meera remained quiet, allowing the Holy Spirit to finish the work. After a long silence, Lydia finally said, "I will call her today." Meera nodded. "Good. God is waiting for your obedience. And when you obey quickly, you will feel the weight lift." But Lydia still felt something else in her heart. Fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of reopening old pain. Fear of hearing her sister blame her. So she asked, "What if she is still angry? What if she refuses to talk to me?" Meera smiled gently. "Obedience is your part. The result is God's part. You do your part. Leave the rest to Him." These words stayed with Lydia all day. She returned home, sat on her bed, and stared at her phone. Her heart was beating fast. She felt nervous and almost changed her mind. She almost said, "I will call her tomorrow. I am not ready today." But then she remembered the warning. Delayed obedience is a trap. So she took a deep breath and called. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Miriam answered slowly. Hello. Lydia swallowed hard. Miriam, it's me. There was a long silence on the other side of the phone. Lydia felt her heart break again, thinking her sister might hang up. But then Miriam spoke softly. I am glad you called. The words surprised Lydia so much she started crying. Both sisters talked for a long time, about their argument, about their hurt, and about how silence had made the pain worse. By the time their call ended, Lydia felt something leave her heart. It was as if a heavy stone had been lifted. That night, Lydia slept peacefully for the first time in months. The next morning, she went to see Mama Meera again. You were right, she said with a warm smile. The weight is gone. I feel light again. Mama Meera nodded. That is the power of obeying God quickly. When you obey, you open the door to healing. But when you delay, you open the door to trouble. Then the older woman said something Lydia never forgot. Obedience is like a key. If you use it today, it unlocks blessing. If you keep it in your pocket and wait for tomorrow, the lock becomes harder to open. Lydia walked away with a new understanding that day. She realized that disobedience is not always rebellion. Sometimes it is simply waiting too long. She learned that the Holy Spirit speaks softly, and every delay makes that voice easier to ignore. From that day on, Lydia made a promise to herself and to God. When God speaks, I will answer immediately. When God pushes my heart, I will not wait. I will obey today, not tomorrow. And with that promise came a new kind of strength, the strength that comes only from a heart that obeys quickly. Jonas was a quiet man who lived in a busy city filled with noise, traffic, and people rushing everywhere. He worked at a small mechanic shop near the roadside. He fixed cars, changed tires, and spent long hours standing under the hot sun. Jonas did not earn much, but he was thankful. He had a wife named Naya and 2 young children who waited eagerly for him every evening. Their home was small, but filled with love. Jonas loved God deeply. He prayed before work, he prayed after work, and he prayed when he went to bed. People who knew him respected him because he always tried to do what was right. But Jonas had a weakness. He struggled to obey God when the instruction made him uncomfortable. He obeyed easily when God said, "Help that person." He obeyed easily when God said, "Give thanks." He obeyed easily when God said, "Encourage someone," but when God gave him a difficult instruction. When the instruction threatened his comfort. When the instruction required courage, Jonas delayed. Sometimes he even ignored it completely. One day, while Jonas was working on a customer's car, he felt something strong in his spirit, a clear push from God. Jonas, stop working today at 4 o'clock. Go home early. Something is coming. Be with your family. Jonas paused. He looked at his watch. It was only 1 p.m. He had several cars lined up. If he left early, he might annoy customers. His boss might not be pleased. He might lose money. And he told himself, maybe this is just my own mind. Maybe I am overthinking. So he continued working. But the voice in his heart came again, even stronger than before. Jonas, leave early. Go home. Jonas frowned. He argued with himself in silence. What if I'm wrong? What if it's not God? What if the customers complain? What if my boss thinks I'm lazy? He shook his head and said quietly, I will stay. I will leave later. He obeyed his fears. He obeyed his thoughts. He obeyed his schedule. But he did not obey God. At 4 o'clock, he still did not leave. He told himself, I will leave at 5. At 5, he said, I will leave at 6. At 6, he finally closed the shop and hurried home. When he reached his street, he noticed something strange. People outside, talking loudly, pointing at his house. His heart dropped. He ran. When he reached the gate, he saw ashes on the ground, and his neighbors gathered around. His wife was holding their 2 children tightly, shaking with fear. "Jonas," she cried, "we are safe, but the kitchen caught fire." Jonas froze. He could not move. He could not speak. The kitchen wall was black. Smoke was still rising from the window. Neighbors told him what had happened. A wire behind the fridge had sparked. Flames had quickly spread. Naya was in the backyard at that moment and did not notice the fire until it grew strong. She tried to put it out, but it moved too fast. The children were in their room crying loudly. Thankfully, neighbors saw the smoke and rushed in to help. They pulled the children out before the fire reached them. The firefighters arrived and stopped the fire just before it spread to the rest of the house. Everyone was safe, but the kitchen was destroyed. Jonas felt his knees go weak. He slowly sat on the ground, holding his head in his hands. He knew exactly what had happened. God had warned him. God had told him to go home early. God had tried to protect his family. But Jonas had delayed. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, Jonas sat outside on a small wooden bench. Naya came beside him and held his hand gently. "You look troubled," she said softly. "Are you thinking about the fire?" Jonas nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "God told me to come home early. He told me clearly. I felt it strongly. But I delayed. I ignored it. I put work first." Naya's eyes softened. She did not blame him. Instead, she said quietly, "We thank God that He still protected us. But please, next time, listen quickly. Do not wait." Jonas cried silently. The fire had not burned his family, but it burned something inside him, the false belief that delayed obedience was harmless. The next morning, Jonas visited his pastor, Pastor Gainey, and told him everything. He expected to be corrected or judged. But the pastor simply nodded and said, "Jonas, do not carry shame. Take the lesson and rise again." Many believers struggle with delayed obedience. But you must understand something. God's instructions are invitations to protection. When He speaks, He is not disturbing your plans. He is saving your life. Jonas wiped his tears. The pastor continued, "The enemy wants you comfortable in delay. He wants you to say later until later becomes disaster. But God speaks to rescue, not to burden." Jonas felt something shift inside him. He said slowly, "I want to obey immediately, even when it makes no sense." Pastor Gainey placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good. Listen. Obedience does not always feel logical, but it is always powerful. If you choose to obey quickly, you will see God's hand in places you never imagined." From that day on, Jonas changed. When he felt God tell him, "Pray now," he prayed immediately. When God said, "Give this person help," he did not think twice. When God said, "Stop and listen," he stopped instantly. When God said, "Go home," he went home. People around him noticed a new boldness in his life. He was calmer, wiser, stronger, and more sensitive to the Holy Spirit. He no longer doubted the quiet voice in his heart. He no longer feared leaving his comfort zone. Jonas told a friend one day, "Delayed obedience almost cost me everything. Now I obey quickly, before fear has time to speak." And with that new obedience came a new season, a season filled with protection, peace, and divine direction. Meera sat alone inside the prayer room of her church. It was a small room with soft lights and simple wooden chairs. She came there often because it was the only place where she could sit quietly without distraction. Meera had always loved God and wanted to follow His voice, but her journey had been difficult. She had spent many years struggling with one thing: obedience without delay. When she was younger, Meera expected that obeying God would always feel easy or exciting. She thought every instruction from God would come with motivation and strong emotions. But as she grew older, she discovered the truth. The instructions that matter most often feel uncomfortable. They interrupt your plans, your schedule, your comfort, your pride. They require courage more than excitement. Meera remembered the first time God told her to end a friendship that was pulling her away from him. She felt the warning clearly in her spirit, but she delayed. She told herself the same words many believers say, "I will do it next week. I want to be sure first. This is not a good time. When I feel ready, I will obey." But because she delayed, the friendship became more complicated, and she got hurt in ways she could have avoided. It took her 3 years to finally obey the instruction God gave her on the very first day. Another time, God pushed her to start a women's prayer group. She felt fear. She felt unqualified. She felt too young, so she delayed again. When she finally gathered courage to start the group 2 years later, she discovered that many of the women who attended had been waiting and praying for exactly that kind of space. One of them even told her, "If this group had started earlier, maybe I would not have gone through some of the things I faced last year." Those words stayed with Meera. She learned something deep. Delayed obedience does not only affect you, it affects others. When you wait, someone else must wait too. When you delay, someone else stays stuck. When you ignore God's voice, someone else misses help that God planned to send through you. Years passed, and Meera became more mature in her walk with God. She prayed differently now. She listened more carefully. But even with all her progress, she felt that God was preparing her heart for something important, something bigger than she had ever done. One afternoon, while she was sitting in the prayer room, she heard God speak clearly to her heart. "Meera, I want you to write a devotional book for young believers. A simple book that will help them know my voice." Meera closed her eyes, trying to stay calm. A book. She had never written a book before. She did not consider herself a great writer. She did not think anyone would read it. She whispered, "Lord, why me? There are better writers out there. Stronger people. Smarter people." But the instruction came again with peace. "I did not choose them. I chose you." Meera felt tears in her eyes. "God, I am scared," she confessed. And God answered softly, "Obey. I will help you." She opened her notebook. She wrote the title God gave her. She wrote the first sentence. But then, as days passed, she slowly slipped back into her old habit. She got busy with work, church events, family responsibilities, and daily life. She kept telling herself, "I will continue tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. Weeks turned into months. The notebook gathered dust. The idea became weaker. Her courage grew smaller. One night, as she lay in bed, she dreamed that she was standing on a long road with many young people behind her. They looked confused and lost. They were waiting for her to lead them. But Meera just stood still. She did not move. She did not speak. She kept looking back, unsure. And because she would not step forward, the young people behind her could not move either. When she woke up, her heart felt heavy. She knew the meaning of the dream immediately. Her delay was affecting people she did not even know. Her hesitation was blocking blessings God wanted to release. Her fear was standing between others and the guidance they needed. She sat on her bed and whispered, "God, forgive me. I have delayed again." The Holy Spirit answered gently, "Then obey now." The next morning, Meera returned to the prayer room, placed her notebook on the table, and said, "Lord, I will write. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today." Something broke inside her, the chain of delay that had followed her for years. She wrote the first paragraph. Then the second. The pages grew slowly but consistently. Every day she wrote a little more, even when she felt tired or uninspired. And as she obeyed, her confidence grew. Months later, the book was finished. When it was printed and released, young believers from different places sent her messages. "Your book helped me hear God clearly. I felt lost, but your words showed me direction. I had been praying for guidance, and your book came at the perfect time." Meera cried as she read each message.